Hello, everybody. Welcome. So excited to be here. Fantastic guest from the Northeast, Jeremy Darron, who runs kind of our Connecticut division up there. Excited for what he has built and is building to talk a little bit about just hiring trends and what he's seeing from both an individual hiring and then also from a candidate perspective. So, Jeremy, excited to be here, man. Tell us a little about you quickly and how long you've been at Vaco and what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I'm excited to be here. So I've been in total in the recruiting business now, going on, I guess, 12 years. I've been in Vaco a little over 2, so I got the luxury of starting right before the pandemic. I started about 5 months before.
Wow.
So I came in to build out our practice here, and it was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of pivoting.
Yeah.
Fast forward 2 years later, we're approaching 20 people. So
Awesome.
yeah, I've had the opportunity of building out the entire team and hiring people, training people, and we've been remote.
Well, talking about how the market shifted from a hiring standpoint, from finding a job, what candidates are doing. I mean, you're in the middle of the fire right now as far as building a team remote. Talk about that a little bit as far as how the market has changed from a hiring standpoint. How have you been able to do it, hiring so many people remote?
Yeah.
What that led for you, and what's the success to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing for us was being adaptable. And I think, a lot more is on hiring managers in this new kind of era of being remote all the time. So I think, we've kind of built a lot of different programs and like soundboards for people coming on. I think, if you think back to 2 years ago, you're in an office, right? You can walk over to someone's desk and see what they're doing or, hear them on the phones talking. And I think, so what we've done as a team is really been focused more on that, is building like training programs, onboarding programs. And I think it's something in the market too that people really need to look at, because if you think about it, people now looking for a job, they used to look 25 miles from your house.
Right.
Now you have competition. You're looking at people who are looking at jobs across the entire country.
That's
and
right.
You have people that maybe are in maybe Midwestern states that are tapping now into New York City, San Fran, and markets. So when hiring managers are going to hire, it's not just looking for local. I mean, you're looking at the whole country now.
That's right. I mean, obviously, I've had some folks on the program in the past. They've all said the same thing. I mean, especially Taylor. Destin talks much about how we don't have there's no local salary anymore. Like, it's a national salary across the board. It's one comp we're looking off of. So
yeah,
totally that for sure. What talk quickly on just the hiring process for, the competition has never been greater, right?
Yeah.
And so you're getting calls from clients that maybe haven't hired in the past 18 months. They're growing, business is taking off. Obviously, the clients last year understand kind of where the demand is. What have you seen just with the shift there with clients, and what are they doing to kind of push the onboarding process? How are we, with the competition being so great to hire, what are some of your clients doing to get creative to kind of get a step up?
Yeah, and I think, it all starts with right off the get-go, right? You have to have a plan going in to hiring. You can't just say, let's go post a job and let's hope for somebody comes in, right? So, I think that's the number one thing. It's like, it's almost like hiring managers are turning into salespeople now.
Yeah.
Where you have to put your sales cap on, and it's almost like the number one question we ask every manager is like, how do we sell this role, right? Because that candidate might be interviewing 5 other companies at the same time, So I think there's really streamlining the process of the get-go, knowing your interview committee, getting through the whole entire interview cycle, right? Quicker and faster. We used to have 2-3 weeks, but again, when candidates have 3 offers in a week and a half, especially if you're looking at software engineers, it's, people got to adjust and adapt the process.
Well, I think telling our folks too is like, hey, you're the expert in this. You know what's going on every day. Is educate them, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And if they don't want to play ball, then that's fine. Then we've got to move on to the individuals that will. But it comes down to the competition is so steep, and also too, I heard this yesterday we had a client call us on a controller type role. They're like, God, we have 8 of these same roles right now.
Yeah.
Like, wow, if I'm a hiring manager, I'm like, wow, you have 8 of the same ones. Like, what do I need to do to step up my game, right? To attract talent, right? And so I think just people are like, the people that are thinking with a plan, right? Here's what we're going to do. Here's the execution we're going to have, and here's the selling points, right? Organization to attract people like that. Those are the individuals that are winning and then that can make prompt decisions, right? The
Yeah.
folks that they're just like, yeah, just throw an ad out there. Yeah, just find us somebody. Can you just bring us? Don't give us any time. Don't partner with us. Those are the individuals that are really, really struggling in the hiring game right now.
Oh yeah, and it's impacting their business
Yeah,
a lot too, because a lot of these people are falling behind with projects, and it ends up costing them more money sometimes
for sure.
in the long run. So
Yeah.
I think in tech too, we're seeing a ton with technical assessments and people adjusting. Like we have a lot of these companies now are actually like there's so many different assessments and software out there, and some are good and some are bad. I think people got to really evaluate that process too, because I mean, like often we'll have, again, most candidates, I would say on average, if they're actively looking for a job, usually are getting contacted and interviewing with 5 to 7 companies at the same time.
Yeah.
And, in IT, you get a lot of people that take 2-hour take-home assessments, 3-hour take-home assessments. And what's happened is the ones that have adjusted and adapted the process are getting those quick. And we can't, some developers aren't even taking those assessments.
That's right.
So,
well, I think you heard it, everybody. Hiring manager looking for talent, come with a plan. Make sure it's concise. Make a prompt decision. It's easy as that, right, Jeremy?
That's it.
All right, so we got the individual. They've hired the individual in the door. They're retaining talent.
Mm-hmm.
How are they retaining talent, and how are they keeping the culture alive remote? Like, this is a question I get constantly, and we've talked about it in the past, but I'd love to see your perspective of something different. But how are they doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, just starting off, probably talking more about salaries too, because this is really tricky, right? Because you're getting new people in the door, but you're losing people at the same time.
That's right.
And I think every company is going through the struggle with internal pay equity, and just, a lot of people, again, if you're going on the open market, 9 times out of 10, you're paying them more than your internal people, which are your seasoned people that you need, right? Your key players. And that's a big thing. I think even before you even start hiring, right, and retaining these people, you got to look at that, because you got to keep your own first. And there's companies that will build these compression reports for you. So I really think managers should look at that. I think though, if you're looking at from the perspective of keeping your people and retaining people,
yeah,
I think streamlining the onboarding process, right? I think for companies that are going through like this digital transformation, right, and bringing people on, having a really sound training program for people. Because I think, again, comes back to the point, if you're not on site, you're not sitting down next to somebody and watching them do the job. You could jump on Microsoft Teams calls, but it's just not the same.
No.
So that's one thing. I think also you got to look at, a lot of these companies are remote now. And so I always tell people, like, look at reinvesting in your employees. So you're saving all this money in operating costs from not being in the office. Companies really need to look at reevaluating it, because again, not every company is going to be the highest paying company. And again, when you look at internal pay equity, it's really hard for companies like large organizations to, change their pay. You can't do it overnight. So I think companies got to really, really evaluate that. Like people, and if you guys look at the study that you guys did in Nashville, the reason people are leaving are 2 things: money, right, and career development. And I think career development's got to be a big emphasis for people. If your employees, you show you care about them and you're investing in them, it comes kind of full circle. And I really think it helps, when you're going to keep people long term.
Yeah. Well, you make a great point. 2 things on the salary. I think people used to evaluate salaries annually. Like, those days are over. I mean, if you're not doing this quarterly and looking at who's coming on, how do they compare with the teams you already have in place, like, you're losing. And then secondly, I think you're totally right on just the development of your folks, right? And I think it shows just a really high level of empathy that you care, right? And saying, hey, I want you to do something great. Whether it's here or potentially, I mean, I talk to people, and it may not be where you're currently at. You could go to some next level that you can't get where you're at, but it doesn't mean you have to. You can still make them feel and treat somebody great, right? And so I think a lot of companies are coming across like, they're so busy, we're doing so much. You need a few people to be like, hey, I need you to like stop and like, what are we doing? Ask us questions. Like the days that we're just so busy, we're running fast, like, you're gonna look back and nobody's behind you, literally.
I think you gotta really like stop and like talk to your employees, right? Everyone's different. Everyone has different motives, and motives have changed, and I think especially in the tech world, I mean, from the time I started to now, it's completely different. There's new tech coming out every day, every week, and people are looking to work with the latest and greatest technology all the time, right? So like investing, if you show and understand what your employees are looking for, especially when you go like have them in house.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to get a certification. I've seen another big thing I think I've seen from companies, and it's something that we even did as our team, is built like a training mentorship program.
Yeah.
Having like a soundboard for somebody coming in, because I think a lot of people in IT, again, if you're early in your career, you're looking for someone to run ideas off of, to learn from. And I think like having that soundboard for somebody when they come on, especially remote, really goes a long way.
Yeah. I think you said it great too, is like, hey, there's not a one formula for everybody involved. Right. And so, there may be, you do some training. There's very few trainings that I make mandatory, but I put it out there for people to go consume. And this is what they want. They go dive into that. But you're totally right. I mean, there's not a one size fits all on this. And I think having individual conversations with your folks and what they need and hearing them is I think a big step, because I think a lot of people are like, well, what do we need to do? I'm like, ask. I think that's the biggest first step, Jeremy. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, some people might want to be leaders, some people might want to be managers, individual contributors.
Yep.
And people have different motives. Like I think, again, this is where it comes maybe to like other ways to retain talent. It really comes down to first just asking that question.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's not a rip off the Band-Aid approach anymore. You gotta customize your training and development plan based on your people.
Yeah.
And what they're looking to do.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too with training. Like, it doesn't always have to be like what you do. It could be something like personal finance. Like how many 25-year-olds do I have sitting in Nashville that maybe aren't investing or don't understand their future or how to go buy a house or whatever the long-term is. And you have a lot of people in-house that have already hit those milestones that could help them. Right. And so they're like, wow, they're helping me personally. They're helping me professionally. Like, being flexible and being empathetic to, wanting them to see them succeed.
Yeah. It's just transparency.
Yeah.
And just talking to your people. That's probably number one.
Love it. Love it. Moving to kind of a job seeker focus. Again, we hit the salary piece. I want to dive in a little bit as far as inflation, competitions, driving salaries, demand, supply of jobs is low, obviously. Is this going to last, Jeremy? Where are we? Where have we seen the tipping point? Are we just getting started? In your opinion, obviously, you're not a fortune teller. Maybe you are on this side, sure, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. I think we went through like different phases with, the pandemic of like phase one was like scared, like, what do we do? Let's put a pause and everything. Right. And then companies started to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then you have tons of companies like with this, the idea of digital transformation. Right. And that's a push that's not stopping anytime soon. I think it's just getting started. And again, this deals with inflation too, right? Because you have people that are, everything costs more now and prices are getting driven up. And all these companies are going through like CRM implementations or ERP implementations, right? Building new products and solutions. And that costs more than ever. And when you have, I think this is part of the reason salaries are getting like driven up, is because, again, the demands, there's no one out there. And again, say if a company's in the middle of an implementation and they can't find somebody, what are your options?
That's right.
Usually pay people more. And so I think it's just kind of been a trickle effect. So I don't see it stopping anytime soon, because I think digital and this whole new world is really just getting started.
Yeah, I think the drive and also just the control is shifted a little bit, obviously, to the job seeker. They're well aware of it and the demand for their need. It's crazy, man. I think salaries are going up. I mean, Jeremy, I'm in the midst of looking for a car right now for my daughter.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been car shopping the past 2 years.
Yeah.
They're expensive, right? Just everything is going up relative. And so I think it's just part of it. But I think you're totally right with understanding kind of and if I'm giving a job seeker advice, it's not always about the money, right? But I think it's a big part of it. But it's a piece, but understanding kind of where, obviously looking at the culture where you have the growth, the development, the company, they're pouring into you kind of deal. So the grass isn't always greener, but as companies are evaluating salaries, and I say this all the time, I'm not in the day-to-day anymore of the front lines. And so when clients do call me and ask me, it's always a money question a lot of times. And I'm like, I'm scared to ask because I feel like it's changing monthly on what it is to me, right?
Yeah. And again, it kind of goes with demand, I mean, I think I was actually reading an article the other day too. And I think since the pandemic, I think it was, people that are, the demand for jobs out there was up 81% since the pandemic started, and job applications were down 11%. So it's just like, as the supply and demand can go on. And again, I think you're looking at a lot of companies like fintechs. There's a surge in fintechs. There's a surge in all these new industries and industries that are booming and probably taking advantage of this situation, right? It just keeps causing more demand,
So as we just continue to focus on the job seeker,
Yeah.
salaries are going crazy. They land the job. Their current employer is like, whoa, we can't lose you. Can't do it. They're getting a counteroffer. What, and this is kind of a sneak peek of my next live. We're going to dive a whole deal into how handle counter offers. But I want to kind of pick your brain a minute on, hey, how do you handle them? What are the variables to consider when getting a counter offer? Show me kind of from your vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, I think with counteroffers too, the stigma has changed a little bit. And I think if you look at like people in the IT world, the average tenure is probably like 2 to 3 years now for people. So I think that's changed. And again, it's all comes down to like when you're hiring somebody, what's their understanding their motives. But if you're looking at it from the candidate side, I think there's some facts that like, yes, people, a lot of times if someone's chasing money, they're able to get that on the open market. So it really comes down to what's important to the candidate. And still, the grass is not always greener though. So I think candidates got to look at the full package, right? Like, a lot of these smaller companies are throwing around big numbers. They sound great, but they may be a higher risk situation.
Yeah.
And so you got to be prepared for it. But I think there's probably less fear than there's been in the past because there's so many jobs.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a candidate market. So, but I think, you got to take into everything into consideration, the risk, equity is a huge thing in small firms. You understand like what's expected of you. Like sometimes you might go to a new position, and again, this is where the grass isn't always greener. Like higher money comes higher expectations.
Yep.
Higher demand, higher pressure. You may go into a startup, and you might get 20, 30K more, which sounds great. You might be working 15-hour days some weeks.
Really. Yeah, I think the biggest thing with counteroffers is people. I think a poor way to look at counteroffers strictly, hey, it's a 20, 25, 30, whatever it is, increase, right? And it's strictly evaluating money. And what majority of individuals, in my opinion, totally my opinion, undervalue is the flexibility and the trust built up with your boss or with your coworkers or with your people that report to you that things are getting done, things are moving. And so I always tell people before you try to go have those conversations on the front end to understand your worth and where they see your value. And if you do all that, then you're like, man, I really feel like I can get more in the open market. And then here's the deal with a counteroff. On the flip side of it, the negative side, when a company is throwing money at you and you've already had those conversations on the front end, they're typically doing it out of desperation because they're being selfish. You're going to put them in a tough spot. Right. And so if you evaluate all the flexibility pieces and you're like, hey, this is a move I need to make, and the client comes and throws you a ton of cash, well, they do value you, but one, they're just poor at planning and poor at communicating it probably, but you're going to put them in a bad spot, which they should have thought about before all this, right? I mean,
yeah, and I think that comes back to what we talked about before with like internal pay equity. Like companies really need to be looking at that. You can't just go and hire a bunch of people and pay them more than your current people because it's going to come back to you. But I do see more and more people are staying with their company. And I think the survey you guys put together, number one motivator for people leaving right now is salaries, and people feel like they're underpaid. So sometimes when people are looking for a job now too, it's more about like I'm looking for more money. So people tend to accept the counter because their main motivator is not that. But yeah, I think you make a good point too with just the team, and understanding that component of it. But yeah, no, I think
we'll make sure to get that in the chat. As far as the link to the survey we did, I think we did it. It was a mix of we just kind of, obviously this is just localized Nashville. We're going to expand that out to more of a global reach, but I think we got 400 or 500 responses.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. It really was. I mean, obviously it's not all about money and why people are moving. But a lot of it's flexibility, some of it's benefits, right? What companies are offering, because we're getting calls on clients and saying, hey, we want to hire this person. And they're like, no benefits. The pay is decent. Trajectory for the company, like, I don't know. There's not much of a story to tell. Like, we're pushing back on them. Like, hey, we've got so many jobs right now. I mean, I talked to one division right now in our group. They probably have 110 openings right now. And we're trying to how to prioritize, how to manage, how to do. Man, my lights just went out. I'm back. All right, there we go. And so trying to figure out that piece of where it's going, and just trying to talk to clients that the demand has never been greater for talent.
Mm-hmm.
Counter offers are flying, salaries are flying. I mean, we have literally had 2 instances where we've gotten somebody a $60,000 raise.
Yeah.
60,000. I mean, I'm not
Multiple.
broadcasting that like I'm going to go market that we can get you a $60,000 raise. But the skill sets
It's happening now.
the skill sets are in high demand, right? And they wanted to show like, hey, we value this person, and I'm like, my jaw hit the floor.
I've seen things that I've never seen before. I mean, I've seen one candidate that they guaranteed him employment for a year, 2 years, and then guaranteed pay, even if something happened with the company when they're going through this merger. And it was a counter. They offered him 40K more plus guaranteed pay for a year straight. Crazy. I've never seen that before. You don't get that very often, but yeah, I mean, I think the candidates have a lot to consider when they're going to, because I think, everyone's life's changed since COVID started. Like people have families, you have kids that work, kids in daycare, kids going to school, like remote learning. And so like, I do think everyone's got to everyone's at a different point in their life, but people really got to take all those factors in consideration, because again, the money's obviously a critical factor, right? But it's not everything.
Well, and there's the tech results there in our chat, so you can see this. Jeremy, this was awesome, man. Thanks for the time joining me. Gave us some great insight. Excited to see what you're doing up in Connecticut. And Jeremy, if somebody from Connecticut's watching, how do they find you?
LinkedIn's the easiest. Just ping me. Anytime. I'm responsive. I'm always working, right? Because I think everyone is now, right? So, but yeah, reach out anytime, and I'd be happy to set up a call or give anyone advice. So
awesome, man. Well, Jeremy, thanks so much for the time. Look forward to seeing everybody in a couple of weeks. I think we're talking counter offers and more in depth. So if you got that, come on back for that time, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Jeremy, thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle.
Bye.